To be young with your entire future ahead of you is an exhilarating feeling, a feeling that all of us hope to experience at some point in our lives. Cynthia Miller, a public school teacher from Beckley, West Virginia, was one such person. She had made the choices that would affect the future course of her life, and by August of 1981, had set the wheels in motion that would bring them to fruition. Sadly, Miller would not live to see her dreams become reality. The very night before she was to be wed, Miller was brutally gunned down in her own home in an act of violence seemingly without rhyme or reason. For 36 years, authorities have struggled to make some sense out of her slaying. Today, they feel they are closer than ever to a resolution and are again pleading with the public for information.
The lazy days of summer were winding down in Beckley, West Virginia on August 26, 1981, as the mercury struggled to reach the 80-degree mark. Time for sunbathing and swimming would soon give way to a new school year. This was, however, just one of the many things on the mind of local teacher Cynthia Jane Miller that Thursday afternoon. Sadly, Miller would never hear the school bell ring again. Sometime between the hours of 9:30 p.m. and midnight on August 26th, the life of the bubbling 27-year-old schoolteacher was brutally taken. Born in Beckley on August 2, 1954, Miller grew up with the reputation of someone who made good grades and enjoyed playing piano and made friends easily. After graduating from Woodrow Wilson High School in 1972, Miller went on to earn a master's degree in math from Concord College. Miller divorced from her husband, Michael Cole, in 1979. As a deeply religious person, this move was difficult for Miller, though she pressed on. In 1981, Miller was to start teaching math at Park Junior High in Beckley, West Virginia. In mid-August, she and her new boyfriend, Gary O'Neill, decided the time was right for them to wed. At the time, O'Neill was a police officer in the nearby town of Leicester, West Virginia. The couple applied for a marriage certificate on August 24th, and the future for Miller and her soon-to-be groom looked bright. No one could possibly have foreseen the depth of the gathering clouds. August 26, 1981, was hectic for Miller and O'Neill. With school set to start in 4 days, Miller spent the first part of the day decorating her room at Park Junior High with fellow teacher Norma Saul. Miller left the school at noon for a doctor's appointment and returned to her home at 103.5 Miller Street, where she remained until about 4 p.m. At that time, Miller decided to visit her father at the Montgomery Wards in Beckley. Miller's father later came by her house to make minor repairs to a garage door. He remained at the home until 6:30 p.m. At 7 p.m., Gary O'Neill arrived and visited with Miller while she worked on Avon orders. Excited about their wedding the following day, O'Neill decided he would visit his parents in Princeton, West Virginia, about 40 miles away. He left the house at 8:20 p.m., telling Miller he would likely return around 11:30 p.m. The downstairs tenant, Terry Boland, arrived at 8:30 p.m. Boland had difficulty in unlocking the door to the downstairs apartment and asked Miller for help. According to Boland, Miller was in a jovial mood as she helped with the door and then went back upstairs. It was the last time anyone would see Cynthia Miller alive. Boland later recalled she had laid down in bed around 9 p.m. She then heard Miller come down the steps to their joint laundry room and return upstairs. Immediately thereafter, Miller placed a call to the regional Avon manager to go over the orders she had been working on. According to Miller's manager, the two remained on the phone together for about 20 minutes. 10 minutes later, around 9:30 p.m., Gary O'Neill attempted to call Miller's home to let her know he would be later than originally planned. He received no answer. O'Neill remained at his parents' home, but grew increasingly uneasy at not being able to reach his fiancée. Around 11:30 p.m., his apprehension got the better of him, and he left for home. At about the same time, Terry Boland was awakened by a call from her father whose car had broken down. Boland got up and left the apartment a few minutes later to give her father a ride home. She did not notice anything out of the ordinary. O'Neill arrived back at the apartment at approximately 12:40 a.m. The date was now August 27th. Curiously, O'Neill noted that the front porch light was not turned on, as was usually the case when Miller was expecting him. Aided by the flame of his lighter, O'Neill managed to unlock the front door. Once it was open, O'Neill was met with a horrendous sight. Lying on the floor, about 2 feet directly in front of him, was the lifeless body of Cynthia Miller, the back of her head soaking in blood. O'Neill was virtually stunned. More out of instinct than rationale, he managed to get to the phone and call 911. A battalion of emergency vehicles soon surrounded the small home. Attempts to resuscitate the young woman were in vain, and Miller was declared dead at the scene. She had been shot in the head 4 times with a .25 caliber pistol. 2 of the shots were fired from close range. The other 2 were fired from where the gun was against her head. Aside from the ballistics and some blood spatter, the house itself yielded very little in the way of evidence. Miller's own .25 caliber automatic pistol was found at the residence and quickly ruled out as being involved. The house and the surrounding neighborhood were thoroughly searched, but the murder weapon was never found. Like Sherlock Holmes' Dog in the Night, the crime scene was most notable for what was not found. There was no signs of forced entry outside, and no signs of a struggle inside. Nothing had been taken from the home, and Miller's body showed no signs of trauma or sexual assault. Also missing from the scene was Miller's downstairs tenant, Terry Boland. When questioned later that day, Boland told police that she returned to the neighborhood at around 1 a.m., but decided against trying to go home when she learned what had happened. The following day, Boland moved out of the apartment, telling the Raleigh Register,
"I don't live there anymore. I moved out today, back to my mother's, where it's safe."
According to Boland, she never saw nor heard anything while at the apartment that night. Though skeptical, police have never implied that Boland was anything more than a person of interest. Miller's body was removed from the scene and taken first to Raleigh General Hospital in Beckley for an autopsy. The following day, it was sent to the office of the state medical examiner in Charleston. Both the Raleigh County coroner and the chief state medical examiner concurred that Miller was shot at approximately 9:30 p.m. and likely expired within half an hour. Following the discovery of Miller's body, the police fanned out around the neighborhood in search of clues. One of Miller's neighbors, Barry Webb, reported hearing what he thought was the sound of 4 firecrackers around the time police think the murder took place. Webb stated that he had a clear view of Miller's home and looked out to investigate the source of the noise, but saw nothing. Webb told police he heard a total of 4 shots. 3 of them were loud, and 1 sounded muffled. Employees of the Beckley Public Works joined police in the search of Miller's neighborhood, but no additional evidence was ever found. Miller's murder was a shock to the city of Beckley and all who knew her. Friends of Miller's fiancé, Gary O'Neill, later reported seeing him in a distraught, disbelieving state. Cynthia Miller was laid to rest in the Blue Ridge Memorial Gardens on Monday, August 30th, 1981. The same day as the new school year would start in Raleigh County. The investigation into Miller's murder dragged on. As the months slowly turned into years, the case gradually went cold, occasionally warmed up by the odd bit of corroborating information. The overall scenario, as it was reported in 1981, has changed very little. From the beginning, police stated that they had 2 suspects in mind. Captain Jeffrey Shumate of the Beckley Police Department reiterated this in a 2011 interview when he stated that Miller
opened the door to someone who had a vendetta against her husband. We believe this was done to her to get back at him.
Shumate went on to say the other suspect is someone who was known to Miller at the time of the shooting, but he was unable to elaborate further.
By their very nature, cold cases are nothing if not unpredictable. Even as we were researching material to film this story, new information was being reported.
On April 25, 2017, Crime Stoppers of West Virginia announced they were forming a new multi-agency cold case task force, and that Miller's murder would be the first case they would focus on. A reward of $10,000 for information leading to the resolution of cases under their purview is being offered. This renewed effort has apparently borne fruit. On May 8th, the Beckley Police Dept publicly announced that they had reviewed new information which could lead to a break in the 36-year-old case. Sergeant Morgan Bragg stated the information they received has reinforced an original theory that there may have been some relationship between Miller and her assailant. In an effort to galvanize public awareness and solicit as much help as possible, Crime Stoppers erected several large billboards, one along a major thoroughfare near Miller's former residence. Police are continuing to urge anyone with information about this horrendous crime to forego any fears they may have and come forward.
The Beckley Police and Crime Stoppers of West Virginia feel that Miller's murder is only one step away from a resolution. Taking that final step has proved a frustrating task, but they feel they are close. They now think it is likely that Miller knew her assailant and willingly allowed him or her into her home. They are hopeful that someone with knowledge of Miller's murder will view this and have the courage to break their silence in this 36-year-old case.
If you have any information about this case, contact Detective Sergeant Morgan Bragg with the Beckley Police Dept at 304-256-1720.